Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight we're diving deep into that terrifying space between wakefulness and sleep. A place where your mind is alert, but your body is completely frozen. We're talking about sleep paralysis. For most, it's a brief, unsettling glitch, but for others, it's a doorway to unimaginable horrors where nightmares bleed into reality. You're trapped, helpless, forced to watch as the darkest corners of your mind, or perhaps something else entirely, take shape before your very eyes. We've gathered 5 accounts from people who've experienced the truly terrifying side of sleep paralysis. These aren't just bad dreams, they're waking nightmares. So turn down the lights, get comfortable if you can, and prepare yourself for stories that will make you think twice about closing your eyes tonight. The man in the rocking chair. It started subtly, the way these things often do. I was living in this old farmhouse in rural Vermont, the kind with creaky floorboards and drafts that whisper through the walls even on the calmest nights. I'd just drifted off, or so I thought, when that familiar heavy sensation pressed down on my chest. It felt like lead weights were stacked on me, pinning me to the mattress. Panic flared instantly, hot and sharp, as I realized I couldn't move a muscle, couldn't twitch a finger, couldn't turn my head, couldn't even scream, though a silent one was tearing through my mind. My eyes, however, were wide open, darting around the dimly lit bedroom. Moonlight filtered through the thin curtains, casting long, dancing shadows across the room. Everything looked normal, yet menacingly still. The antique rocking chair in the corner, a relic left by the previous owners, was usually the first thing I focused on. Its dark wood and worn floral cushion seemed almost comforting in the daylight, but now, shrouded in shadow, it looked like a throne waiting for an occupant. And that's when I saw him. At first, he was just a denser patch of darkness coalescing in the chair, my breath hitched, trapped in my lungs. I tried to rationalize it, a trick of the light, my eyes adjusting, my mind playing tricks because of the paralysis. But the darkness deepened, solidified, taking on a vaguely human shape. Tall, unnaturally thin, draped in what looked like tattered, flowing robes the color of soot. He was sitting perfectly still in the rocking chair, facing me. I couldn't make out any features, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth, vaguely indented surface where a face should be. It was somehow more terrifying than seeing a monstrous visage. It was a void. I couldn't make out any features, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth, vaguely indented surface where a face should be. It was somehow more terrifying than seeing a monstrous visage. It was a void. The silence in the room became deafening, amplifying the frantic thudding of my own heart against my ribs. It felt like the only sound in the entire universe. Then, slowly, deliberately, the rocking chair began to move. A soft, rhythmic creak echoed in the stillness, back and forth, back and forth. Each creak sent a jolt of pure terror through my immobile body. The figure remained seated, its featureless head fixed on me. It didn't need eyes to watch. I could feel its focus, cold and malevolent, pressing down on me almost as physically as the paralysis itself. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to disappear, for the paralysis to break, for anything to happen. "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" I screamed internally. But when I forced my eyes open again, drawn by a morbid, inescapable curiosity, he was still there, and he was closer. He wasn't in the chair anymore. The chair was still rocking gently, empty now, its creak a lonely, haunting sound. The figure was standing beside my bed, looming over me. He was impossibly tall, his head nearly brushing the ceiling. The sooty rags he wore seemed to writhe subtly, like they were woven from living shadows. The air grew colder, biting at the exposed skin of my arms. A smell hit me then, faint but disgusting, like damp earth, and something metallic, like old blood. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, anything to anchor me to reality. It's a hallucination, it's just the sleep paralysis. But the cold was real, the smell was real. The crushing weight on my chest and the sheer primal fear were undeniably real. The figure slowly lowered its head, bringing that blank, featureless face closer to mine. I could feel a strange energy radiating from it, a deep, ancient coldness that seeped into my bones. I tried to scream again, putting every ounce of will I possessed into forcing air past my paralyzed vocal cords. Only a pathetic, choked gasp escaped. The figure slowly lowered its head, bringing that blank, featureless face closer to mine. I could feel a strange energy radiating from it, a deep, ancient coldness that seeped into my bones. I tried to scream again, putting every ounce of will I possessed into forcing air past my paralyzed vocal cords. Only a pathetic, choked gasp escaped. The figure paused, its head tilted slightly as if listening. And then it reached out a hand. Long, skeletal fingers emerged from the ragged sleeve, unnaturally pale against the black fabric. They looked like bleached bone, tipped with jagged, dirty nails. The hand moved with agonizing slowness towards my face. I couldn't look away. I was transfixed by horror, watching those bony fingers drift closer, closer. I could almost feel the icy touch before it even made contact. My heart felt like it was going to explode. Every nerve ending screamed in protest, begging my body to move, to flinch, to recoil, but I was trapped, a prisoner in my own skin. Just as the fingertips were about to brush my cheek, a sudden violent shudder racked my body. It felt like an electric shock. With a gasp, I lurched upright in bed, the paralysis breaking like shattered glass. I was drenched in cold sweat, my breathing ragged, my heart pounding like a drum solo. The room was empty. The rocking chair was still. The figure was gone. The smell of damp earth and old blood had vanished. Only the moonlight and the familiar shadows remained. I was drenched in cold sweat, my breathing ragged, my heart pounding like a drum solo. The room was empty. The rocking chair was still. The figure was gone. The smell of damp earth and old blood had vanished. Only the moonlight and the familiar shadows remained. But the terror lingered, thick and suffocating. I didn't sleep again that night or the night after. I sat with the lights on, staring at that empty rocking chair, the rhythmic creak echoing in my memory. I eventually got rid of the chair, but the image of the tall, faceless man, the feeling of his icy presence, the sight of those skeletal fingers reaching for me, that never truly left. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet, I still hear a faint creaking sound and the weight settles back onto my chest just for a moment. The whispering ceiling. The whispering ceiling. My sleep paralysis experiences weren't usually visual. For me, it was always about sound and pressure. It would start with a low hum, a vibration deep in my ears that would grow until it felt like my skull was resonating. Then came the weight, clamping down on my limbs, my chest, making each breath a conscious effort. I'd lie there, pinned to my bed in my small city apartment, listening. Usually it was just the hum, maybe the sound of rushing wind or distant, unintelligible voices. Unpleasant, sure, but manageable, familiar even, until one night. The hum started as usual, a low thrumming that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The pressure descended heavy and suffocating. My eyes snapped open, staring up at the plain white plaster of my ceiling. The streetlights outside cast an orange glow, illuminating the familiar water stain near the corner, shaped vaguely like Australia. But the hum wasn't fading into background noise this time. It was changing, modulating. It started to sound less like a machine and more like whispers. But the hum wasn't fading into background noise this time. It was changing, modulating. It started to sound less like a machine and more like whispers. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, overlapping, intertwining, creating a sibilant, rushing sound that filled the room. It was like standing next to a waterfall made of secrets. I couldn't make out any distinct words, just the shh and cess sounds rising and falling in chaotic waves. Panic began to bubble. This was new, this was wrong. I tried to wiggle my fingers, my toes, the usual trick to try and break the paralysis, but I was locked down tight. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. It felt like it was coming from the ceiling, as if the plaster itself was speaking in those hushed, urgent tones. My eyes scanned the surface, searching for a source, a crack, anything. There was nothing, just the flat, white expanse and the Australia stain. Then a single voice detached itself from the cacophony. It was clearer, closer, right above my head, a woman's voice, thin and dry, like rustling paper. And it wasn't just whispering, it was speaking to me. Woman's voice. We see you lying there, so helpless. Ice flooded my veins. I wasn't just hearing things, something was aware of me, of my state. The chorus of whispers seemed to intensify, swirling around the lead voice, agreeing, amplifying. Woman's voice. Can't move, can't scream. Poor thing. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block it out, but the voice was inside my head now, echoing in the chambers of my skull. The pressure on my chest increased, making it even harder to draw breath. It felt like someone was sitting squarely on my sternum. Woman's voice, we know what you fear, we smell it on you like sweat, like decay. A wave of nausea washed over me. What did it mean? What did it know? My mind frantically cycled through my deepest anxieties, my regrets, my hidden shames. Was this thing feeding on them? Let us in, just relax, let go. We can take the fear away, we can take everything away. The cacophony of other whispers surged, a tidal wave of sibilance washing over me, urging me to comply. The pressure intensified further, feeling like my ribs might crack. I felt a strange pulling sensation, as if something were trying to draw my consciousness out of my body up towards the whispering ceiling. Terror gave way to a desperate defiance. No, I screamed in my mind. Get out! Leave me alone! I focused every shred of my being on moving, on fighting back against the invisible weight and the insidious voices. I pictured my fingers twitching, my leg kicking, my head turning. Nothing happened. I was utterly powerless. You can't fight us. We're always here, in the walls, in the shadows, waiting. And then the ceiling began to change. The smooth white plaster seemed to ripple like the surface of disturbed water. The orange streetlight glow shimmered across it. Tiny cracks started to appear, spreading like veins, forming intricate, disturbing patterns. From the cracks, a darkness began to seep, an oily blackness that pulsed faintly. The whispering reached a fever pitch, swirling, ecstatic. The dry voice spoke one last time, its words seeming to drip from the ceiling like venom. We're coming through. I saw the plaster begin to bulge downwards above me, stretching, thinning. The blackness behind it swirled more violently. I knew with chilling certainty that if that ceiling broke, whatever was whispering, whatever was watching, would fall upon me. Just as a final terrifying bulge formed directly over my face, threatening to rupture, the paralysis snapped. I gasped, sucking in air, and scrambled backward off the bed, collapsing onto the floor in a trembling heap. My eyes shot to the ceiling. It was perfectly normal, flat, white, solid. The Australia stain sat innocently in the corner. The whispering was gone. The pressure had lifted. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. The air felt clean again. I stayed on the floor for a long time, staring up, unable to shake the feeling of those thousands of whispering voices, the dry, cruel rasp, talking directly to me, the sight of the ceiling threatening to give way. Even now, years later, in a different apartment, I sometimes wake up in the dead of night and just listen. Listen for the hum, Listen for the whispers starting up again in the ceiling above. This happened when I was staying at my grandmother's house. It was an old place filled with antiques, porcelain dolls, and the scent of potpourri and dust. I always felt a little uneasy there, like the eyes of the dolls followed me. I was sleeping in the guest room, a small space crowded with furniture, including an old, ornate wardrobe against one wall. The paralysis hit me hard that night. It was sudden. One moment I was drifting in the comfortable void of near sleep. The next I was wide awake, eyes open but utterly immobile. A crushing weight pressed down, familiar yet always terrifying. My room was bathed in the faint bluish light filtering through the window from a street lamp down the road. Everything was still, silent. Too silent. The usual house sounds, the ticking clock downstairs, the hum of the refrigerator were absent. It was like being encased in amber. My eyes darted around, trying to pierce the gloom. The wardrobe stood like a dark monolith against the far wall. Its doors were slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of deeper blackness within. As I stared, focusing on that sliver of darkness, I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. Something felt wrong about it. Then I saw movement. From the gap between the wardrobe doors, something pale and thin emerged. A hand. But it wasn't a normal hand. The fingers were too long, jointed in too many places, moving with a jerky, unnatural gait. It looked like the hand of a marionette puppet, crafted from wood or porcelain, painted a stark, unhealthy white. The hand paused, fingers twitching as if testing the air. Then slowly, deliberately, it pushed the wardrobe door further open. The hinges groaned softly in the oppressive silence, the sound grating on my nerves. Behind the door, in the deep shadow, I could just make out a figure. It unfolded itself from the wardrobe's confines with the same jerky, unnatural movements as the hand. It was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its limbs were stick-thin, connected by visible ball-like joints at the elbows, knees, shoulders, and hips. Its skin, or whatever covered it, was the same pale, smooth material as the hand, gleaming faintly in the dim light. It wore simple, dark clothing like a traditional puppet. But the most horrifying part was its face. It was a smooth, blank oval, devoid of any features except for two painted-on eyes, wide, black, unblinking circles that stared directly at me. Its mouth was a simple, curved red line, fixed in a permanent, unsettling smile. The marionette figure stepped fully out of the wardrobe, its wooden-soled feet clicking softly on the floorboards. It stood there for a moment, head tilted, regarding me with those empty, painted eyes. The fixed smile seemed to widen, though I knew it was impossible. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but lie there, helpless, watching this grotesque puppet that had somehow come to life. But the paralysis held me fast. I could only watch in silent terror as the marionette began to move towards my bed. Its movements were grotesque, limbs swinging loosely, bodies swaying, feet clicking with each jerky step. It was like watching a broken toy animated by some malevolent force. With every step it took, the feeling of dread intensified, coiling in my stomach like a cold snake. It reached the side of my bed and stopped, looming over me. Its blank face was just inches from mine. I could see the faint brush strokes in the paint, the slight imperfections in the smooth surface. The fixed smile seemed impossibly cruel up close. Those black hole eyes stared down at me, devoid of life, yet filled with a chilling awareness. Then it raised its hands. Long, pale, multi-jointed fingers twitched. I braced myself, expecting pain, expecting something. But it didn't touch me. Instead, fine, almost invisible threads descended from its fingertips towards my body. They shimmered faintly in the blue light, like strands of spider silk. I felt a bizarre tingling sensation as the threads made contact with my arms, my legs, my head. It wasn't painful, but it was deeply, profoundly wrong. I felt a pull, a subtle manipulation. My right arm twitched upwards slightly, not by my own volition, but as if pulled by a string. The marionette tilted its head again, the painted smile unwavering. It lifted its hands higher, and my arms and legs began to lift off the bed, dangling awkwardly in the air. I was being moved like a puppet myself, my limbs responding to the invisible threads controlled by the creature beside my bed. Panic surged, hot and overwhelming. I was being controlled, manipulated by this horrifying effigy. I fought against it with every ounce of my mental strength, trying to reclaim control of my own body, but it was useless. My limbs jerked and swayed according to the marionette's silent commands. It made my hand wave, it made my leg kick out stiffly. It was playing with me. The most terrifying part was the utter silence. No cackling, no whispering, just the soft clicks of its movements and the sight of its blank face, its painted smile and those awful empty eyes watching me as it made my body dance at the end of its invisible strings. It felt like an eternity lying there, trapped in my own skin, forced to perform for this silent, malevolent puppeteer. I felt tears prickle at the corners of my eyes, the only part of me I could still control. They tracked slowly down my temples. Was this it? Was I going to be trapped like this forever, a puppet for this thing? Suddenly the marionette froze. Its hands dropped slightly. The invisible thread slackened, and my limbs flopped back onto the mattress, heavy and unresponsive. The creature stood perfectly still for a moment, its head cocked as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, with the same jerky, unnatural movements, it turned and walked back towards the wardrobe. Click, click, click went its feet on the floorboards. It stepped back inside, pulling the door almost shut behind it, leaving just a sliver of darkness. And then the weight lifted. Air rushed into my lungs in a ragged gasp. I could move. I scrambled out of bed, heart pounding, body trembling uncontrollably. I didn't dare look towards the wardrobe. I fumbled for the light switch, flooding the room with harsh yellow light. I forced myself to look. The wardrobe stood against the wall, its doors slightly ajar, just a wardrobe. Old, perhaps slightly creepy, but inanimate. There was nothing inside but dusty emptiness and the faint smell of mothballs. No marionette, no painted eyes, no invisible strings. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being pulled, controlled, the image of that blank, smiling face. I slept with the light on for the rest of my stay, and I never went near that wardrobe again. The memory of being a helpless puppet in the hands of something from the shadows haunts me, a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we are when sleep paralysis takes hold. The draining presence, this one felt different. It wasn't about a terrifying figure or menacing sounds. It was about something far more insidious, something that felt like it was stealing a part of me. It happened during a particularly stressful period in my life. I was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, running on fumes and caffeine. Exhaustion was my constant companion. I finally crashed into bed one night, sinking into the mattress like it was quicksand. Sleep came fast, but it wasn't restful. I found myself surfacing into that awful state of awareness, mind alert, body locked down. The usual panic started, but it felt muted, dulled by my profound exhaustion. The room was dark, only the faint glow of my digital alarm clock cutting through the blackness, 3:17 a.m. There was no figure standing over me, no whispers in my ear. But there was a presence. It wasn't localized to one spot. It felt like the entire room was filled with it. A heavy, stagnant energy pressing in from all sides. It was cold, but not a normal cold. It was a deep, penetrating chill that seemed to bypass my skin and sink directly into my bones, my soul. And then I felt it start. A sensation like draining. It's hard to describe. Imagine the feeling of warmth leaving your body on a cold day, but amplified, accelerated, and deliberate. It felt like something was siphoning my energy, my vitality, pulling it out of me through unseen pores. It started in my extremities, my fingers and toes tingling with cold, then numbness, spreading slowly up my limbs. I wasn't just paralyzed, I felt like I was weakening, fading. My thoughts became sluggish, coated in a thick fog. The initial panic was replaced by a growing sense of dread and a profound, unnatural weariness. It felt like more than just sleep deprivation. It felt like my life force was being leached away. I tried to fight it, to hold on to my energy, my consciousness, but it was like trying to hold water in my hands. The draining sensation intensified, concentrating in my chest around my heart. I could feel a distinct pulling sensation there, gentle but insistent, like a vacuum hose pressed against my soul. With each pull, I felt weaker, colder, more detached from my own body. There was no visual component, no monster to focus my fear on, which somehow made it worse. It was an invisible, intangible assault. The enemy was the silence, the cold, the oppressive weight, and this relentless, silent draining. My breathing grew shallow, each inhale feeling like it took monumental effort, each exhale feeling like I was losing more of myself. I remember thinking with a strange clarity amidst the fog, is this how it ends? Am I dying? The thought wasn't accompanied by frantic fear, but by a chillingly calm resignation. The draining presence was that powerful, that overwhelming. It didn't just paralyze my body, it seemed to be paralyzing my will to fight, replacing it with a cold, empty lethargy. Time seemed to stretch and warp. Minutes felt like hours. The numbers on the clock didn't seem to change, stuck perpetually at 3:17 a.m. The cold deepened until it felt absolute. I felt hollowed out, a mere shell. The pulling sensation in my chest became a dull, constant ache. I closed my eyes, not in surrender, but because even keeping them open felt like too much effort. I don't know how long I lay there, suspended in that cold, draining void. It felt like an eternity. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. I was just fading, diminishing. Then faintly, distantly, I heard a noise, a car alarm blaring down the street. The sound, sharp and intrusive, cut through the oppressive silence and the mental fog. It was an anchor to the real world, a world outside this cold, draining nightmare. Something inside me latched onto that sound. A tiny spark of defiance flickered back to life. No. I focused on the alarm, on the reality it represented. I pictured warmth, sunlight, energy flowing back into me. I fought against the lethargy, pushing back against the invisible draining force with sheer willpower. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, I felt a change. The pulling sensation lessened. The profound cold began to recede, replaced by a tingling warmth, starting deep within my chest and spreading outwards. It felt like blood flowing back into numb limbs. I concentrated harder, focusing on the feeling of warmth, of life returning. The paralysis started to loosen its grip. First a finger twitched, then a toe. The effort was immense, like lifting solid lead, but it was movement. Hope surged through me, chasing away the last vestiges of the unnatural weariness. With a final convulsive effort, I managed to turn my head, breaking the spell completely. I sat bolt upright, gasping, shivering violently despite the returning warmth. The room felt normal again. The oppressive presence was gone. The air didn't feel stagnant anymore. My digital clock read 3:21 a.m. Only 4 minutes had passed, but it felt like I had been gone for years, dragged to the edge of oblivion and back. I felt utterly wrecked, more exhausted than I'd ever been in my life, but it was a normal exhaustion, physical and mental, not the soul-deep emptiness I'd felt during the paralysis. It was as if I'd run a marathon while fighting off some psychic vampire. That experience changed how I viewed sleep paralysis. It wasn't just about fear, it was about vulnerability, about the feeling that something could reach in and take something essential from you while you lay helpless. I never felt that specific draining sensation again, thankfully, but the memory serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things are the ones you can't see, the ones that attack your very essence. I started prioritizing sleep after that, terrified of reaching that level of exhaustion again, terrified of inviting that cold, draining presence back into my room. The glitch in reality. My experiences with sleep paralysis often played with perception, blurring the lines between the dream state and waking reality, but one episode stands out as particularly reality-bending and terrifying. It felt less like a hallucination confined to my bedroom and more like the fabric of reality itself was tearing at the seams. It began typically enough, that heavy blanket of immobility descending, the surge of adrenaline as I realized I couldn't move. My eyes snapped open. I was in my bedroom, lying on my back. Morning light was filtering through the blinds, casting striped patterns across the room. It seemed like a normal morning, except for the fact that I was completely paralyzed. I tried to move, failed. Tried to call out, failed. Standard procedure. I focused on wiggling my toes, hoping to break the cycle. As I focused, I noticed something odd about the light filtering through the blinds. The stripes weren't stationary. They were jittering, vibrating slightly, like a bad video feed. Strange, I thought. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. Then I heard it, a sound like static, low at first, then growing louder. It wasn't coming from any specific direction. It seemed to be everywhere, filling the air. Accompanying the static was a visual distortion. The edges of objects in my room, the dresser, the lamp, the door frame, began to shimmer and blur like heat haze rising from asphalt. The jittering light stripes intensified, vibrating erratically. The static noise swelled, becoming almost deafening, punctuated by pops and clicks. It felt like the world around me was destabilizing, glitching like a corrupted computer program. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the paralysis. This wasn't just a hallucination, this felt wrong on a fundamental level. Then the wall opposite my bed flickered. For a split second it vanished, replaced by an image of a completely different room. Dark, metallic walls, strange symbols glowing on them. Then it snapped back to my familiar bedroom wall, but the image was slightly skewed like a misaligned projection. It flickered again, showing the strange metallic room, then back. Flicker, flicker, flicker. My heart was pounding fit to burst. What was happening? Was I losing my mind? Was the paralysis somehow breaking my perception of reality? The static roared in my ears. The visual distortions worsened. My entire room seemed to ripple and warp. The floor tilted. The ceiling seemed to drip like melting wax. Through the static, I started hearing voices, distorted and fragmented, like snippets from a broken radio transmission. System failure, containment breach, subjective reality, unstable. The words made no sense, but they amplified the feeling that I was caught in the middle of some catastrophic breakdown. Then the flickering wall stabilized, not on my bedroom, but on the other room, the dark metallic space. It looked like some kind of observation chamber or laboratory. The glowing symbols pulsed rhythmically, and in the center of that room I saw myself, or rather another version of me, lying on a narrow cot or table, eyes wide with terror, body rigid, identical to how I was lying in my bed. It was like looking into a mirror reflecting a different, terrifying reality. This other me was also clearly experiencing sleep paralysis, trapped and helpless in that sterile alien environment. The static noise reached a crescendo, and the image of the other room, the other me, began to pixelate and break apart like a shattering screen. Geometric shapes in harsh neon colors flashed erratically. The distorted voices overlapped into an unintelligible roar. It felt like my senses were being overloaded, reality collapsing into chaos. I squeezed my eyes shut, overwhelmed, terrified. The sheer sensory assault was unbearable. I felt like I was dissolving, losing my grip on who and where I was. Was I the me in the bedroom or the me in the metallic room? Were both real? Was anything real? Just when I thought my mind would shatter, everything stopped. Abrupt silence, absolute stillness. I cautiously opened my eyes. I was in my bedroom. The morning light streamed calmly through the blinds, casting steady, normal stripes. The walls were solid. The furniture was still. The static, the voices, the flickering images, all gone. And the paralysis, it had lifted. I sat up slowly, my body trembling, my mind reeling. I looked around the room, half expecting it to flicker or dissolve again, but everything was normal, utterly, terrifyingly normal. Had it all been a hallucination, the most vivid, complex, reality-shattering hallucination imaginable? I got out of bed on shaky legs, touching the wall, the dresser, needing the tactile confirmation that they were real, solid. But the memory of the glitch, the static, the other room, the other me, it felt too real, too visceral to dismiss entirely. It left me with a profound sense of unease, a lingering doubt about the stability of the world I perceived. What if sleep paralysis isn't just about the brain's misfirings? What if sometimes in that vulnerable state between sleep and wakefulness we get a glimpse behind the curtain, a peek at the seams of reality or even into other realities? The experience left me questioning everything. It wasn't just a scary encounter with a shadow figure or a disembodied voice. It was a confrontation with the potential fragility of existence itself. And that perhaps is the most terrifying thought of all. I find myself looking a little closer at the edges of things now, wondering if they might flicker, wondering what other rooms, what other versions of myself might lie just beyond the veil. Those were 5 glimpses into the terrifying world of sleep paralysis, where the lines between nightmare and reality blur, and the mind confronts horrors while the body lies helpless. It's a stark reminder of the strange and sometimes frightening places our own consciousness can take us. What did you think? Which part of these stories sent the biggest chill down your spine? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If these tales of waking nightmares resonated with you, or if you just appreciate a good scare, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who enjoys the darker side of things, and make sure you subscribe to Whispering Reapers for more explorations into the unsettling and the unknown. Thanks for watching, and try to sleep well, if you can.